The gavel is about to fall on 19-year-old Devin Washington. The prosecutor, Leland Pierce, smirks. He's built a perfect case, painting the black teen as a violent thug for an armed robbery he didn't commit. Pierce has hidden evidence, threatened a witness, and played every dirty trick in the book. He knows the system is on his side. He's about to win and add another conviction to his perfect record. What Pierce doesn't know is that the judge just received a note. And the man who just walked into the back of the courtroom isn't just an observer. He's the state attorney general, and he's Devin's father. The air in courtroom 3B of the Maricopa County Superior Court was stale, smelling of old coffee and cheap floor wax. It was a smell 19-year-old Devin Washington couldn't get out of his nose. He sat at the defense table, his oversized, ill-fitting suit, provided by his public defender, itching at his neck. He looked small, swallowed by the polished mahogany of a system that was about to digest him whole. The prosecution calls Kyle Morton to the stand. Leland Pierce, the prosecutor, moved with the predatory grace of a shark. He was handsome in a cruel, angular way, with sandy blonde hair swept back and a crisp $1,000 suit. He was the star of the DA's office, known for his law and order stance and a conviction rate that bordered on miraculous. He flashed a brilliant, toothy smile at the jury, a jury he had carefully selected. 9 white, 2 Latino, 1 Asian. Not a single black face. Devin's public defender, Rachel Berg, scribbled frantically on a yellow legal pad. She was young, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, and she was drowning. She knew her client was innocent, but knowing it and proving it were 2 different universes. Kyle Morton, a pale, twitchy kid of about 20, shuffled to the stand. He wouldn't look at Devin. He wouldn't look at anyone but Pierce. "Mr. Morton," Pierce began, his voice like smooth honey, "please tell the court, in your own words, what you saw on the night of August 22nd. Kyle swallowed. I was working the night shift at the Circle K on Jefferson. And what happened at approximately 11:30 p.m.? He came in." Kyle's hand, resting on the Bible, was shaking. He made a vague gesture toward the defense table. "Can you please identify the man who came in?" Kyle's eyes darted to Devin, then quickly away. "Him." "Let the record show," Pierce boomed, "that the witness has identified the defendant, Devin Washington." Rachel Berg shot up. "Objection!" The witness gestured at the entire defense table, which includes myself and my client. Judge Fiona Kincaid, a woman whose stern expression looked like it had been carved from granite, sighed. "Sustained. Mr. Pierce, be more specific. Mr. Morton, you must be precise. Who are you identifying?" Pierce smiled. His trap sprung. "My apologies, Your Honor. Mr. Morton, do you see the man who robbed you in this courtroom? Please point directly at him." Kyle Morton's face was slick with sweat. He slowly raised a trembling finger and pointed directly at Devin Washington. It was him. He had a gun. He told me to empty the register. He took the money and a box of... He faltered. "A box of what, Mr. Morton?" Pierce prompted gently. "Cigars. Black Crown brand." Devin's head snapped up. He whispered to Rachel, "I don't even smoke. I've never smoked." Rachel patted his arm. "Stay calm. It's his turn." "And this man," Pierce continued, pacing in front of the jury box, "he threatened your life." "Yeah. He said he'd pop-put me if I hit the alarm." "A terrifying experience, I'm sure." Pierce paused, letting the words hang in the air. He walked back to his table and picked up a clear evidence bag. Inside was a single, slightly crushed box of Black Crown cigars. "And is this the brand of cigars that was stolen?" "Yes, that's it." "This box, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Pierce announced, "was found in the defendant's backpack during his arrest less than 30 minutes after the robbery, just 6 blocks away. He placed the bag on the evidence table like it was a checkmate. Rachel Berg felt her stomach clench. The cigars were the linchpin. Devin had sworn to her they weren't his, that he'd been at the park writing lyrics, and the cops descended on him. He said they searched his bag and suddenly produced the cigars, claiming they were at the bottom. It was a classic plant, but it was his word against 2 officers and an eyewitness. "Your witness?" Pierce said, sitting down with a satisfied smirk. Rachel stood, adjusting her glasses. "Mr. Morton, you seem nervous." "Objection. Relevance," Pierce called out, bored. "It goes to the witness's credibility, Your Honor. He seems to be under duress." "I'll allow it. Briefly, Ms. Berg." "Mr. Morton," Rachel said, her voice kind but firm. "You originally told Detective Harding that the robber was wearing a full ski mask. Is that correct?" Kyle paled. I don't remember." "You don't remember?" Rachel pulled a document. "This is Detective Harding's initial report. Quote, victim states assailant was approximately 6 feet tall, male, unknown race, wearing a black ski mask and a grey hoodie. But today, you're certain it was my client. How can you be sure if the man's face was covered?" Kyle looked desperately toward Pierce. Pierce stood up. "Objection. Counsel is badgering the witness, who has already positively identified the defendant." "I am not," Rachel countered. "I am pointing out a massive contradiction in the state's primary witness." "Mr. Morton," Judge Kincaid interjected, leaning forward. "Please answer the question. How did you identify the defendant if the robber wore a ski mask?" Kyle was sweating profusely now. He pulled it up. For a second, when he was leaving. He pulled it up, and I saw his face. Just for a second. It was a lie. A bad one. Rachel, Devin, and even Pierce knew it. But would the jury? "He pulled it up?" Rachel pressed. "Why would he do that? He's in the middle of a robbery, and he decides to unmask himself." "I don't know. He just did," Kyle shouted. "It was him. I know it was him." "Or," Rachel said, lowering her voice, "is it because Mr. Pierce here showed you a picture of my client, a single photo, not a lineup, and told you it was him?" "Objection!" Pierce was on his feet, his face red. "Counsel is making baseless, inflammatory accusations." "Sustained!" Judge Kincaid barked. "Ms. Berg, you will strike that from your questioning unless you have proof. Move on or sit down." Rachel's shoulders slumped. She had no proof, just a gut feeling and a terrified witness. "No further questions, Your Honor." As Kyle Morton scuttled off the stand, he cast one quick, terrified look at Devin. It wasn't a look of recognition. It was a look of apology. And Leland Pierce just smiled. The first day of the trial concluded with the testimony of the arresting officer, a man named Sergeant Mike O'Malley. He was a 20-year veteran with a face like a bulldog and a long history of aggressive policing in predominantly black neighborhoods. Pierce led him through the testimony with practiced ease. "Sergeant O'Malley, you were on patrol when the APB came out for the robbery, correct?" "That's right. Armed robbery. Suspect described as a black male, grey hoodie, fleeing southbound on Jefferson." "A description," Rachel interrupted, "that was later proven to be based on a masked man." "Objection, Your Honor. The description was compromised from the start." "Noted, Ms. Berg. Continue, Mr. Pierce." "And what did you observe approximately 6 blocks from the scene?" "We spotted the defendant, Mr. Washington, walking quickly. He matched the description. Grey hoodie." "Was he the only person on the street?" "The only one matching the description, yes." "And what happened when you attempted to stop him?" He became agitated, belligerent, started asking why we were messing with him. Classic signs of guilt. Objection. Rachel was on her feet again. Officer O'Malley is not an expert on the signs of guilt. He's offering speculation as fact. Sustained. The jury will disregard that last remark. Stick to the facts, Sergeant. The facts, O'Malley said, glaring at Rachel, are that he resisted arrest. We had to subdue him. Subdue him? Rachel would pick up on that word later. Devin's resistance had resulted in a sprained wrist and a cut over his eye that was still healing. And upon searching his backpack, Pierce continued, "What did you find?" At the bottom of the bag, underneath a notebook and some clothes, we found this. O'Malley pointed to the baggie containing the Black Crown cigars. Did the defendant have an explanation for the cigars? He claimed they weren't his. Said we put them there. O'Malley laughed, a short, ugly bark. Heard that one 1,000 times. The jury members exchanged glances. They've heard it 1,000 times too. It was the cry of every guilty man. Thank you, Sergeant. Your witness? Rachel Berg walked slowly toward the witness box. Sergeant O'Malley, how many other black men in grey hoodies do you think were in that 5-mile radius on a warm August night? Objection. Speculative. Sustained. Let's rephrase. Did you stop anyone else? Or did you just see Mr. Washington, decide he was your man, and stop looking? We apprehended a suspect who matched the description and was found in possession of the stolen property. We did our job. You're certain he was in possession? My client claims the cigars were planted by you or your partner. O'Malley's face darkened. That's a very serious accusation, counsel. It's a very serious charge, Sergeant. Tell me, did your body camera record the entire search of the backpack? Pierce, who had been leaning back in his chair, suddenly sat up straight. O'Malley shifted. My camera was active during the arrest, yes. That's not what I asked. Was it recording at the precise moment you allegedly found the cigars at the bottom of the bag? There was a pause. There was a technical issue. The camera's battery was running low. The feed seems to have cut out for about 90 seconds. Right during the search. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Devin shut his eyes. 90 seconds. That's all it took to ruin his life. How convenient, Rachel whispered. A 90-second gap, just when the most critical piece of evidence appears. No further questions. As O'Malley stepped down, the weight in the room had shifted. The jury was no longer certain. They were confused, suspicious. Pierce's perfect case was springing leaks. Judge Kincaid called for the afternoon recess. In the hallway, Pierce grabbed O'Malley by the arm, yanking him into a small alcove. A technical issue, Pierce hissed, his face inches from the cops. It's legit, I swear, O'Malley protested. The battery was low. It was just bad luck. You listen to me, you flat-footed idiot, Pierce snarled, his slick facade gone. I don't believe in bad luck. I believe in convictions. That public defender is making us look like clowns. You and your partner better have your stories straight. She's going to put your partner on the stand tomorrow. And if he so much as blinks differently than you did, this whole thing goes sideways. He'll hold, Leland. Don't worry, the kid's guilty. He looked the part. He acted the part. I don't care if he's guilty, Pierce shot back, fixing his tie. I care that the jury thinks he's guilty. That jury was mine until you and your battery issues. Fix it. Pierce stormed off toward the men's room. He didn't see Rachel Berg step out from the adjacent women's restroom. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but she had heard every single word. I don't care if he's guilty. I care that the jury thinks he's guilty. She leaned against the wall, her heart hammering. It wasn't just a frame-up. It was a conspiracy. Pierce wasn't just prosecuting a case he believed in. He was railroading a kid he knew was a weak target, and he was actively collaborating with the police to do it. She sprinted back to the holding cell where Devin was waiting. "Devin," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and hope. "I think I just found what we need. We're going to put Pierce himself on trial." The next morning, Rachel Berg walked into the courtroom with a new, dangerous energy. She felt like she was holding a live wire. The day was set for the defense to present its case, which was, by all accounts, thin. It consisted of one person, Devin Washington himself. "The defense calls Devin Washington to the stand," Rachel announced. Devin walked to the box, his hands cuffed in front of him, until he was seated. He swore the oath, his voice quiet but clear. "Devin," Rachel began, "please tell the jury where you were on the night of August 22nd, around 11:30 p.m. "I was at Eastlake Park," Devin said. "I go there to write. I'm a musician. A rapper?" "And what were you doing?" "Just writing. I had my notebook, my headphones. I was just trying to work out a new track." He glanced at the jury, his eyes pleading. "I know it sounds. I don't have anyone who can prove it. I was by myself. But I was just writing." "And what happened next?" "These cops, their lights just flooded the whole park. They ran up, guns out, yelling at me to get on the ground. I was terrified. I asked what was going on. I said I didn't do anything." "Is that when Sergeant O'Malley says you became belligerent?" "I wasn't belligerent," Devin insisted, his voice rising. "I was scared. He had his knee on my back. I told him he was hurting my wrist. He just pushed harder. Then his partner started going through my bag. And the cigars? The Black Crown cigars? I've never seen them before in my life," Devin said, his voice cracking with frustration. "I have asthma. I don't smoke. My mum died from lung cancer. I wouldn't touch that stuff. The cop pulled it out and was like, 'What's this, huh?' And I told him. I said, 'That's not mine. You know that's not mine.' And he just laughed." "Thank you, Devin. No further questions." It was Pierce's turn. He stood, slowly buttoning his jacket. He looked at Devin like he was a piece of gum on his shoe. "A musician?" Pierce began, his voice dripping with condescension. "You mean a rapper? Tell me, Mr. Washington, what are your songs about? The struggles of the street? The police? How the system is out to get you?" "Objection," Rachel snapped. "This is character assassination, Your Honor. It's irrelevant and deeply prejudicial." "Mr. Pierce," Judge Kincaid warned, "you are on a very thin wire. Move to the facts of the case." "The facts are his character, Your Honor," Pierce countered smoothly. "He claims he was just writing." "I'd like to know what." "I write about my life," Devin said, lifting his chin. "I write about losing my mum. I write about feeling like I'm being watched all the time, just for how I look." "So you do have a problem with authority? With the police?" "I have a problem with being treated like a criminal when I'm just sitting in a park." "So you resisted?" "I asked a question," Devin shot back, "and I got thrown to the ground for it." "Right." Pierce smiled. He walked over to the evidence table and held up the cigar box. "So your testimony is that Sergeant O'Malley, a 20-year veteran of the force, and his partner, Officer Kent, both decided to frame you. They just happened to have a box of Black Crown cigars, the exact brand stolen, in their squad car, waiting for a rapper to frame." "I don't know how it happened," Devin said, his voice desperate. "I just know it's not mine." "Of course you don't." Pierce turned to the jury. He has no respect for the law. He's caught red-handed with the stolen goods, 6 blocks from the scene, matching the description. His only defense is that the cops planted it. The oldest excuse in the book. And now he's lying to you on the stand. I'm not lying. You're not. Pierce's voice went cold. Mr. Washington, is it true that you were arrested 2 years ago for shoplifting? Devon froze. Rachel shot to her feet. Objection. Your Honor, that record is sealed. It's a juvenile offense. Mr. Pierce knows this is inadmissible. Objection sustained. Judge Kincaid's voice was a thunderclap. Mr. Pierce, that was a flagrant and unprofessional violation. The jury will strenuously disregard that question. It has no bearing on this case whatsoever. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. A thief, a rapper, a liar. My apologies, Your Honor, Pierce said, not sounding apologetic at all. I'll rephrase. Mr. Washington, you're asking this jury to believe that you, a young man with, let's say, friction with the police, were the victim of an elaborate conspiracy over a $200 robbery. It doesn't matter what it was over, Devon said, tears of rage in his eyes. You're doing it right now. You're twisting everything. No further questions, Pierce said, dismissing him with a wave. Devon walked back to the table, defeated. I'm sorry, Rachel, he whispered. I blew it. No, Rachel said, her eyes fixed on Pierce. You didn't. He did. The defense rests, Your Honor. Judge Kincaid looked at the clock. It's 11:30. We'll take our lunch recess and return at 1 p.m. for closing arguments. She banged her gavel. As the jury filed out, Pierce packed his briefcase, whistling softly. He'd won. The juvenile record slip was a dirty trick, but it worked. It cemented Devon as a bad kid. The jury would be back with a guilty verdict in under an hour. Rachel, however, was already sprinting to the court clerk's office. The conversation she'd overheard. I don't care if he's guilty. She needed to do something with it. It was hearsay. But what if she could use it to lodge a formal complaint? What if she could get a mistrial? She found the head clerk, a man named Ben, who was known for being a stickler for rules. Ben, I need to file a motion for a mistrial based on prosecutorial misconduct, she said, breathless. Ben sighed. Miss Berg, Judge Kincaid doesn't grant those lightly. You need more than Pierce's grandstanding. I have more, Rachel said, lowering her voice. I overheard him in the hall yesterday. He was talking to Sergeant O'Malley. He said, and I quote, I don't care if he's guilty. I care that the jury thinks he's guilty. He's not trying a case. He's building one. He knows the evidence is tampered with. Ben's professional boredom vanished. His eyes widened. He said that? Out loud? Yes. And I need to tell the judge. This isn't just a dirty lawyer. This is a crime. The judge is at lunch, Ben said. But this is serious. Kincaid hates this stuff. She hates him. Everyone knows Pierce is dirty, but no one's ever caught him. Ben looked at the case file on his desk. State v. Washington, Devon. Washington. Washington. Why does that name? He typed something into his computer. He was just doing routine due diligence, cross-referencing the defendant's file. He typed Devon Washington. Then he typed Washington, Robert. He stopped. He clicked a link. A profile popped up. He clicked another. His face went completely white. Oh my God, he whispered. Ben, what is it? Rachel asked. Ben looked up at her, his hands shaking. Ms. Berg, your misconduct motion is about to become the least of Leland Pierce's problems. Does Devon know who his father is? What? Of course. He's estranged from him. Some construction guy? I don't know, he doesn't talk about him. Why? Ben turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was the official state website, and on it a picture of a tall, imposing, smiling black man. The caption read, "Robert Washington, Arizona State Attorney General." Rachel Berg's knees went weak. His father is the chief law enforcement officer of the entire state, Ben finished, and Leland Pierce just framed his son. "Does the judge know?" Rachel whispered. "She's about to." Ben grabbed the file and a printout. "This isn't a mistrial anymore. This is a 5-alarm fire." Judge Fiona Kincaid was picking at a salad in her chambers when her clerk, Ben, burst in without knocking, a severe breach of protocol. "Your Honor, you need to see this. Immediately." Kincaid put down her fork, her annoyance plain. "Ben, I am on a 30-minute recess. Whatever it is, it can—" "No, Your Honor, it cannot." He slapped the printout of the Attorney General's webpage on her desk, next to Devin Washington's intake file. State versus Washington. Devin Washington. Look at the father's name on the intake. Robert Washington. I ran it. That is Robert Washington. Judge Kincaid stared at the photo of the Attorney General. Then she looked at the intake form, then back at the photo. Her blood ran cold. Is this confirmed?" she asked, her voice low. "He's estranged, apparently," Ben said, "which is likely why no one's made the connection. The kid has no prior adult record. He came in through the public defender system. Pierce probably saw Devin Washington, 19, black, no private attorney, and just licked his chops. He never bothered to look." Kincaid leaned back, the implications washing over her. The chief law enforcement officer of the state, his son, in her courtroom, being railroaded by a prosecutor from her own county. The body camera glitch, she whispered. "The shoplifting slip," Ben added. "The coerced witness," Rachel Berg said, stepping into the chambers just behind Ben. "Your Honor, I need to be heard." Kincaid looked at Berg, then at Ben. "Ms. Berg, this is highly irregular." "I know, Your Honor, but I overheard Mr. Pierce threatening Sergeant O'Malley yesterday, and I overheard him say he didn't care if my client was guilty. He is suppressing exculpatory evidence and tampering with witnesses. I was coming to file for a mistrial when Ben found this." Kincaid stood up. The salad was forgotten. She was furious. Her anger was a cold, precise thing. She wasn't angry that the boy was the AG's son. She was angry that a prosecutor, operating under her authority, was so arrogant, so racist, and so stupid that he would pull these stunts. The fact that his victim was Robert Washington's son just meant the explosion would be nuclear. "He's not just stupid," Kincaid said, thinking aloud. "He's banking on the kid being a nobody. He's done this before. How many other Devin Washingtons has he sent up the river because they didn't have a powerful father? The question, Your Honor," Rachel said, "is what do we do now?" Kincaid looked at the clock. 12:45 p.m. "Court resumes in 15 minutes. Mr. Pierce is expecting to give his closing argument and get a conviction." She picked up the phone on her desk. "Ben, get the district attorney on the phone. Tell him I need him in my courtroom in 10 minutes, or I'm calling the state bar and the governor. Ms. Berg, you are going to get your motion." She dialed a number. "Who are you calling, Your Honor?" "The one person who can stop this circus dead," Kincaid said. She waited. "Yes, this is Judge Fiona Kincaid. I need to speak to Attorney General Robert Washington. Tell him it's an emergency regarding his son." At 1:00 p.m., courtroom 3B was full again. The jury filed back in. Leland Pierce was at his table, sipping water, a confident smile playing on his lips. Devin Washington sat beside Rachel Berg, looking paler and more hopeless than ever. "All right," Pierce thought. Time to close the deal. Judge Kincaid entered, her face an unreadable mask. Court is back in session. Mr. Pierce, you may begin your closing argument. Thank you, Your Honor. Pierce stood, buttoning his jacket. He turned to the jury, his arms spread wide. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the facts are simple. The facts are undisputed. On August 22nd, a man walked into a convenience store, threatened a young man's life, and stole from him. That young man, Kyle Morton, bravely sat on that stand and pointed to the man who did it. That man, he pointed at Devon. We then heard from Sergeant O'Malley, a decorated officer who found the defendant 6 blocks away, matching the description. And what did he find in his bag? The stolen property, the cigars. The defense, Pierce scoffed, is a fantasy. It's a conspiracy. It's the cops planted it. It's the witnesses lying. It's I was just writing rap music. It is an insult to your intelligence. It is the desperate, pathetic lie of a young man who has no respect for the law, no respect for this court, and no respect for you. He is a common thief, Pierce's voice rose, and he is counting on you to be fooled by his... The main doors of the courtroom suddenly slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Everyone turned. Leland Pierce paused, annoyed at the interruption. Your Honor... But his words died in his throat. Standing in the doorway were 2 men in dark suits, state police, and between them was a tall, powerfully built black man who radiated an authority that eclipsed everyone in the room, including the judge. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, and his face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't look at the jury. His eyes were locked on Devon. Devon's head snapped up. His jaw went slack. The blood drained from his face. He whispered one word. Dad? The Attorney General of Arizona, Robert Washington, began walking down the central aisle. The thud, thud, thud of his footsteps on the marble floor was the only sound in the dead, silent room. Leland Pierce looked at the man. He looked at Devon. He looked back at the man. A dawning, sickening, cold sweat horror began to crawl up his spine. He didn't understand. Washington. Devon. Washington? Robert. Washington. No, oh no, 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 no. Robert Washington reached the defense table. He put one large, steady hand on his son's shoulder. Devon was trembling, looking up at his father as if he were a ghost. It's all right, son, Robert Washington said, his voice quiet but carrying in the silence. He then turned, his gaze falling for the first time on Leland Pierce. It was not a gaze, it was an indictment. Pierce felt his vision swim. The confident, smug prosecutor visibly shrank, his face turning the color of ash. Judge Kincaid finally spoke, her voice ringing with judicial steel. Mr. Pierce, it appears the defense has a new spectator. Please, continue with your closing argument. Leland Pierce opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked from the stone-faced Attorney General to the furious judge. The jury was staring, utterly bewildered. I, Pierce stammered. Your Honor, I'm not. What is the meaning of this interruption? Interruption? Robert Washington spoke, his voice a low baritone that commanded absolute attention. I'm not interrupting, Mr. Pierce, I am intervening. Your Honor! Pierce shrieked, his composure shattering. This is wildly improper. This is witness intimidation, or jury tampering. Sit down, Mr. Pierce. Judge Kincaid's voice was lethal. You're embarrassing yourself. The jury will be excused. Now. The jury, looking panicked, was quickly ushered out. The moment the door closed, Judge Kincaid turned her full attention to Pierce. Beside her, the district attorney, Pierce's boss, Howard Klein, had slipped in from a side door, his face grim. He had gotten Kincaid's message. "Leland," Klein barked, "what in God's name did you do?" "Howard, I was trying a case. A simple armed robbery," Pierce protested, his voice cracking. "A simple armed robbery," Robert Washington repeated, his voice dangerously calm. He pulled a chair from the gallery and sat down at the defense table, next to his son and Rachel Berg. He nodded to Rachel. "Ms. Berg, well done." He then looked at Pierce. "A simple armed robbery where your star witness, Kyle Morton, was threatened." Pierce's blood turned to ice. "That is a baseless allegation." "Is it?" Robert Washington slid a manila folder across the table to Judge Kincaid. "My office received a call from a very frightened Mr. Morton less than an hour ago. It seems that after he gave his testimony, his conscience got the better of him. Or perhaps he realized who he was lying about. My investigators are taking his sworn affidavit as we speak. An affidavit that states, in no uncertain terms, that you, Mr. Pierce, approached him 2 days ago. You showed him a picture of my son, and you told him that if he didn't identify him on the stand, you would personally resurrect a sealed juvenile drug charge against him." Pierce began to hyperventilate. "He's lying. The kid's a liar. He's—" "And then," the Attorney General continued, his voice rising, "there is Sergeant Mike O'Malley. My office has just pulled the full, unredacted maintenance log for his body camera. It didn't have a low battery. It was manually deactivated from his belt unit for exactly 94 seconds, the precise moment the stolen cigars were discovered. I believe the term for that, Mr. Pierce, is fabrication of evidence." This is a setup!" Pierce looked wildly at his boss. "Howard, you can't let him do this. This is my case, my jurisdiction." Howard Klein, the DA, looked at Pierce with utter contempt. "Your jurisdiction? Leland, you just framed the Attorney General's son. You don't have a jurisdiction. You have a severance package if you're lucky. You're fired." "Fired?" "Oh, you're far more than fired," Judge Kincaid said, her voice dripping with ice. "Mr. Pierce, in my 20 years on this bench, I have never seen such a grotesque and arrogant display of prosecutorial misconduct. You didn't just slip up. You didn't just make a mistake. You, sir, are a cancer." She picked up the folder. "Based on the evidence of witness tampering, fabrication of evidence, and flagrant suppression of exculpatory material, I am declaring a mistrial. This case is dismissed with prejudice." She slammed her gavel. "Devin Washington, you are free to go." Devin hadn't spoken. He just stared at his father. The handcuffs were unlocked. Rachel Berg rubbed his shoulder. "It's over, Devin." "But it's not over," Robert Washington said, standing to his full height. He looked at the 2 state police officers he'd brought with him. "Mr. Pierce, my investigators have also uncovered a private conversation you had with Sergeant O'Malley, overheard by Ms. Berg, in which you stated, 'I don't care if he's guilty. I care that the jury thinks he's guilty.' That is not a prosecutor. That is a criminal." The Attorney General pointed a finger at the trembling prosecutor. "Leland Pierce, you are under arrest for witness tampering, subordination of perjury, and obstruction of justice." Pierce looked at the officers, at his boss, at the judge. The entire system that he had expertly manipulated for years had just turned on him, in an instant, with crushing force. You can't," he whimpered as the officers moved in. "I am the chief law enforcement officer of this state, Mr. Pierce," Robert Washington said, his voice pure steel. "I can, and I am." As the officers pulled Pierce's hands behind his back, securing him with the same cold steel he'd used on so many innocent people, Pierce looked at Devin. His face was a mask of pathetic, begging disbelief. Devin just stared back, his expression hard. "He's all yours, officers," Robert Washington said. As Leland Pierce was dragged, weeping and protesting, out of the courtroom he once commanded, the sound of his own ruin echoed off the walls. The karma for Leland Pierce was not a single event. It was a cascade. It was the complete and total dismantling of his life, a life built on the ruins of others. The first domino was his arrest. The story exploded across the news. Prosecutor arrested in courtroom for framing AG's son. The irony was too rich, the fall from grace too spectacular. His boss, D.A. Howard Klein, trying to save his own office, immediately released a statement condemning Pierce, calling him a rogue agent and a disgrace to the profession. But Robert Washington wasn't satisfied with just firing him. His arrest was just the beginning. The charge of witness tampering against Kyle Morton was ironclad. The obstruction of justice charge, backed by the body cam logs and O'Malley's eventual terrified confession, was a slam dunk. Sergeant O'Malley and his partner, Officer Kent, were immediately suspended. Facing their own charges, they turned on Pierce in a heartbeat. They described a long-standing, unspoken agreement. Pierce expected them to shore up weak cases against the usual suspects. A planted wallet here, a misremembered detail in a report there. Pierce, in return, would make sure their questionable arrests stuck and would look the other way on their procedural shortcuts. The Attorney General's office didn't just investigate Devin's case. They opened a full-scale review of every single case Leland Pierce had ever prosecuted. The floodgates opened. Dozens of defense attorneys, including Rachel Berg, formed a coalition. They started pulling files, re-interviewing witnesses, and discovering a pattern that was horrifying in its clarity. It turned out that in over 40 cases prosecuted by Pierce involving a black or Latino defendant, key evidence had mysteriously appeared, or exculpatory evidence had been lost. Witnesses recanted, claiming Pierce or his pet detectives had threatened them. A man named Hector Gonzalez, serving 10 years for a burglary Pierce prosecuted, was exonerated when his public defender, armed with the new investigation, proved Pierce had suppressed video footage showing Hector was 20 miles away at the time of the crime. A woman named Sharona Jenkins, who lost custody of her children because of a drug possession charge Pierce won, was cleared. The drugs were found in a search that was now proven to be illegal, a fact Pierce had intentionally hidden from the court. Leland Pierce, disbarred and disgraced, his face plastered on TV as the new poster child for corruption, was buried. His law firm partners, the prestigious Doyle, Shaw and Pierce, where his father was a senior partner, unceremoniously scrubbed his name from their letterhead. His wife, a prominent socialite, filed for divorce within the week. His own father, the powerful corporate lawyer, refused to represent him. "You are not my son," he reportedly told him in the holding cell. "You are a liability." The system that Leland Pierce had weaponized was now pointing directly at his own head, and the man pulling the trigger was the most powerful lawyer in the state, a man whose son he had tried to destroy. The final crushing blow came 6 months later. Leland Pierce, having bankrupted himself on legal fees, was offered a deal by the very office he used to work for, now under intense scrutiny from the AG. He stood in a different courtroom, not as a prosecutor, not even as a lawyer. He stood in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his slicked-back hair now a patchy, stress-induced mess. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of witness tampering and 1 count of obstruction of justice. The judge, a colleague who used to lunch with him, looked down at him with disgust. "Mr. Pierce, you took an oath," the judge said. "You swore to seek justice, but you sought only victory. You preyed on the weak, the poor, the nobodies you assumed would never be heard. You were the wolf guarding the henhouse. The only difference between you and the criminals you prosecuted is that you wore a $3,000 suit, and you were 1,000 times more dangerous. It is the sentence of this court that you serve 8 years in state prison." As the gavel fell, Leland Pierce collapsed, a pathetic, sobbing wreck. The hard karma wasn't just that he was caught. It was that he was unmasked. He wasn't a shark, he was a parasite. And now, the host he had been feeding on had finally and violently rejected him. In the quiet, echoing aftermath of the gavel's final fall, 3 lives, irrevocably linked by the explosion in courtroom 3B, began to chart their new courses. For Leland Pierce, the path led downward into an abyss of his own making. His new life began not with a gavel, but with the cold, metallic slam of a cell door at the Arizona State Prison complex. The man who had moved through the halls of justice with the arrogance of a king found himself stripped, deloused, and handed a starchy orange jumpsuit. His name, Leland Pierce, Esquire, was gone. He was now inmate, Hawaii 81506. The system he had so skillfully weaponized now turned its indifferent, crushing weight upon him. He, who had defined men by their worst acts, was now defined by his. He had no power, no allies. His $1,000 suits were replaced by rough cotton, his Italian leather shoes by plastic shower sandals. The most exquisite torture, the hard karma that struck deepest, was his prison assignment, the library. It was a cruel and fitting joke. He was surrounded by the very law texts he had once mastered, the spines of books on constitutional law and criminal procedure mocking him. He was a high priest of a religion he was now excommunicated from. He spent his days stamping due dates, the thud, thud, thud of the rubber stamp, a hollow echo of his gavel. His true terror, however, was not the loss of status. It was the loss of safety. He was surrounded by the very thugs and criminals he had sneered at and railroaded. He walked the yard with his head down, avoiding eye contact, terrified of being recognized. One day, shelving books, he came face to face with a man he had recognized, Hector Gonzalez, a man he'd sent up for burglary. Except Hector wasn't there. He'd been released 2 weeks prior, exonerated by the new investigation. The man Pierce saw was just another inmate. But in his panicked, guilty mind, every face was a ghost of a life he had destroyed. He was the ultimate nobody, and he was suffocating in the terror he had once so casually inflicted. For Rachel Berg, the path led upward, but not in the way she'd ever expected. The quiet, exhausted public defender who had been drowning under a mountain of caseloads became an overnight, if reluctant, minor celebrity. She was the PD who took down Pierce. Her inbox was flooded. 6 different high-powered corporate law firms in Phoenix offered her a partner track, promising a salary with more zeros than she'd ever seen. They promised corner offices, expense accounts, and an end to the brutal, thankless grind of the public defender's office. She looked at the offers, at the life of comfort they represented. She thought of Devin. She thought of all the clients before Devin who didn't have a powerful father, the ones she had lost to men like Pierce. She turned all 6 offers down. A week later, a different offer came. It was a single-page letter on heavy cream stock, embossed with the seal of the state of Arizona. It was from Robert Washington. He wasn't offering her a job, he was offering her a mission. He was forming a new Conviction Integrity Unit, a division of the Attorney General's office with a simple, terrifying mandate. Find the other victims. Find the other Pierces. He appointed Rachel to lead it. She sat in her small, cluttered apartment, holding the letter. This was it. This was the power she had always lacked. She would no longer be a firefighter. desperately trying to save one house at a time. She would now be the arson investigator, with the power to hunt the men who were setting the fires. She accepted. She finally had the resources, the authority, and the backing to fight the system itself. And then there was Devon. After the whirlwind of his release, after the bailiff unlocked his cuffs and the courtroom doors closed, he was left standing in the middle of the empty room. The reporters, the lawyers, the cops, the jury, all were gone. The silence was deafening, heavy with the ghosts of what almost happened. He was alone, except for the tall, imposing man who stood by the defense table. His father. It was the first time they had been in the same room, just the two of them, in over a year. The air was thick with unspoken things. Devon's hands were shaking. He rubbed his wrist, the skin still raw from the cuffs. He looked at the man who was both a stranger and his only family. "You came," Devon said finally. His voice was thick, raw. It wasn't just a statement. It was an accusation. "You came. Now." "I came," Robert said. His own voice was heavy, not with the authority of the Attorney General, but with a deep, personal guilt that had nothing to do with the law. Robert took a step forward, his eyes scanning his son, seeing the cut over his eye, the exhaustion, the way he flinched as he moved. "Why didn't you call me, Devon?" Robert asked. The question pained, almost a whisper. "When you were arrested, why did you let it get this far?" "I would have what?" Devon snapped, the anger he'd been swallowing for weeks finally erupting. It was hot, bitter, and shaking with fear. "Would have what, Dad? Sent one of your suits? Called the DA and made it go away? Bailed me out and hidden me? I didn't want your help. I didn't want the system to save me." His voice cracked, and he pointed a trembling finger toward the empty judge's bench. "That's the system that killed Mum." Robert flinched as if he'd been struck. His wife's death. It had been from cancer, not a crime. But Devon's words hit their mark. While she was sick, Robert had been burying himself in his work, running for office, chasing a vision of public justice. He had convinced himself he was doing it for his family, to build a better world. He hadn't realized that, in the process, he had abandoned them. His son had drifted away, angry and alone, convinced his father had chosen a career over his family. I didn't want to be the Attorney General's son," Devon continued, the words tumbling out, tears of rage and relief stinging his eyes. "I just wanted to be just Devon. I wanted to see if I could make it. On my own." And this, he gestured to the courtroom, to himself. "This is what happens to just Devon. They tried to bury me, Dad. They looked at me, and they didn't see a person. They saw a statistic they could process. If I wasn't your son, if you hadn't walked through those doors," he choked on the thought, "I'd be on a bus to prison right now. That guy, Pierce, he wasn't wrong about one thing. The system is out to get us." Robert Washington, the most powerful man in the state, the very symbol of that system, looked at his son. He didn't see a case or a victim. He saw a terrified boy he had almost lost forever, a boy who was right. "You're right," Robert said. The words shocked Devon into silence. His father had never admitted fault, not like this. "The system is broken," Robert continued, his voice quiet, raw. "It's built by men, and some of them are men like Pierce. Vain, ambitious, cruel men who see justice as a game. I've spent my whole life trying to fix it from the inside, following the rules, believing the rules would win." He looked at the empty jury box, then back at his son. "But today, when I got that call from Judge Kincaid, I didn't come here as the AG. I didn't care about the rules. I came here as your father, and I would have burned the whole building down to get to you." He closed the distance between them. For a second, Devin was rigid, a year of anger and distance still forming a wall between them. Robert didn't care. He pulled his son into an embrace, a strong, desperate hug that was part apology, part rescue. For the first time in his 19 years, Devin felt the full, unconditional, protective power of his father. The dam of adrenaline and fear and rage finally broke. He buried his face in his dad's shoulder, his hands gripping the back of the expensive suit jacket, and he finally let himself cry. He sobbed, not just for the terror of the trial, but for the years of loneliness. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I'm sorry too, son," Robert whispered back, holding him tight, his own eyes closed. "I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I am now. I am now." The legal case, State versus Washington, was over. But the personal one, father and son, had just begun. The trust between Devin and the world was shattered. The trust between him and his father was barely a thread. It was a long road. But as they walked out of the empty courtroom, leaving the ruins of Leland Pierce's career behind, they were, for the first time in a long time, walking it together. The fall of Leland Pierce wasn't just karma, it was a reckoning, but it leaves us with a terrifying question. How many Devin Washingtons are out there right now who aren't lucky enough to be the Attorney General's son? How many lives are ruined by men like Pierce every single day just because they're seen as a nobody? This story is a reminder that the system isn't just broken, it's often working exactly as the corrupt designed it to. Justice is only blind when good people force it to open its eyes. If this story shocked you, if you believe that karma is real and that no one should be above the law, then please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see that even the most powerful bullies can fall. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We have so many more stories of justice, revenge, and karma being served cold, and you don't want to miss a single one. What did you think of Pierce's takedown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.